of the world, now I'm living. And the good just gets better, keeps it giving. Not even close to the end, it's just beginning. Life is getting lighter while the days are getting brighter, yeah.
Good day, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me again. It's Ann Perry, and today I have a very special guest, a very dear friend of mine, Rita Crosbie. Hey, Rita.
Hi there. Hi, Anne. Hi, everybody.
How are we today?
Oh, we're great, thank you. We're enjoying the sunshine, lovely October day, and it's still like 26 degrees or something, so no complaints here on the South Shore.
Okay, this interview's done.
I know, sorry, sweet. You need to move down. You need to move further south.
I know.
Down south.
Rita lives on the south coast. I live on the eastern shore, or the south shore. I live on the eastern shores of Nova Scotia in Canada. So she gets the sunshine, and when she's really kind to us, she shares it with us every now and again. Anyway,
back off, aren't we?
So I wanted to introduce all of my followers to Rita because I just think she's amazing. Rita is an international psychic medium. She's a spirit communicator. And I'll tell you what, I've had several sessions with her and she just blows my socks off every time. Rita's also a professional life coach. So, you know, if anybody's looking for some coaching, she is your girl. Excuse me, she is internationally acclaimed. She has worked in Australia and Canada and the UK. She's been all around. And today I've asked her to come and talk about something that we've wanted to talk about for a while. Both of us are very much into empowerment. You know, we always try and make sure that whatever material we're putting out there is on the topic of empowerment, whether it be for women or men or whatever your life path number is, doesn't matter, right? We just want to make sure that everybody's got the tools that they need. So the topic of today's discussion is going from victim to victorious. So, Rita, explain to me, what does that mean?
What does that mean? You know, sort of, I think we've all felt a victim at some point. You know, it doesn't matter what culture we've grown up in or what environment we've grown up in. We've always been subjected unless we've been exceptionally fortunate. And if any of your listeners have been exceptionally fortunate, that's fantastic. But generally speaking, you know, there'll have been somebody at some point in our lives in some position of authority, usually, you know, whether that was parents or family or religious leader or school or, you know, somebody that we would look up to who have in some way, you know, to use that word, disempowered us, you know, said we can't do something because, you know, we're too this, you know, because you're a girl or because you're a boy or because, you know, even down to like, if you think back to when we were kids, you know, particularly you and I, when we were kids, you know, it was very much boys' toys and girls' toys.
Yes.
You know, you know, there was even the delineation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, like girls weren't supposed to play with Lego and boys weren't supposed to have dolls and, you know, and I know there's still some cultures and people across the planet still a bit uncomfortable with that now. But, you know, it starts very, very early on where we get programmed, we get conditioned to really start limiting our dreams. And you know, if we really let little kids particularly just play on their own, you know, they'll be a superhero or they'll be an explorer or they'll be saving the planet or say they'll be a nurse or a doctor or whatever, you know, or a bin man, it doesn't really matter. You know, but we start somewhere along the line, people, and sometimes from a point of trying to manage those kids' expectations, we'll start saying, oh, no, but, you know, you can't do that because, you know, X, Y, and Z. And then that then translates as we get older and go through life, we've already bringing that baggage with us. So we often feel powerless then to take control of our own life. And of course, most people, you, me, and probably most of the people listening, you know, we're not going to be millionaires. We're not overly wealthy. So, you know, we often think we need a lot of money to go live our dream or to start our vision. And that's not actually true. And one of the greatest things, one of the greatest joys I get is spending some time with people, whether it's in person or over Skype or stuff like this, is to get them to realize that from the place they're starting at now to get to their dream isn't done in one step, you know, and it is actually achievable, that we can start doing something right now, right this moment in time, to start changing what the landscape of our life looks like, really. And that's really, you know, so that victorious, it's like, well, you know, what would victorious look like for me, for you, for anybody listening, because it's going to be different for everybody. You know, for somebody who's got agoraphobia, for example, you know, being victorious is actually being able to walk to the end of the yard, perhaps, or even get out of the door, you know. So, and for somebody, small steps. And for somebody else, you know, being that victorious and winning would be to, you know, to get that book published, or to get that degree or whatever. So again, it's to not measure ourselves and measure our own victories against anybody else's standards as well, because we do that as well. We victimize ourselves even in our successes, because we measure them often against somebody else's, and we should just be measuring them against our own yardstick, really.
It's so true. Oh my God, it's so true. There's so many times that I deal with my clients, and I have to point out to them, you know, they're so afraid they're not going to meet everybody else's expectations. They feel like so many people are putting so much pressure on them to excel and to achieve and to do well and to be, you know, as good as, if not better than your brother or your sister or your neighbor or whatever. And really half the time it's really related to their own expectations that they're afraid they're not going to meet. Right?
Oh yeah.
Because many people, particularly the 11s and the 1s, for example, life path numbers I'm referring to, they hold the bar so freaking high. And, you know, it's difficult, you know, it's difficult for them to meet that bar. So coming up with some kind of a plan, I think is helpful, because I think a lot of people get stuck. Don't you feel a lot of people just get stuck?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and we're all, you know, we can talk a little bit about the hows in a second. Yes. You know, we're all bombarded, aren't we, with these false expectations, not only from maybe family and sometimes friends and school, but, you know, magazines and TV programs, you know, even like, you know, take, you know, Christmas, you know, we're not far away from Christmas for those that celebrate it, you know, and on the TV there'll be all these happy families with these heavily laden tables, these perfectly decorated Christmas trees, you know, and you know, yes, I'm sure there are some people like that, but yeah, it is. It's like it's so far usually from what the norm is, from what most people's like experience of that day is. That again, you know, one of the best things we can do is switch off that TV, really.
Yes.
Stop reading those magazines. You know, there's a UK, there's a band called Savage Garden.
Yes,
and I think they're, I don't know if they're Australian. I can't remember. I'm pretty poor like that.
I think they are.
But
yes.
I thought they were. There's a line from one of their songs, and it says, "I believe that beauty magazines create low self-esteem."
Yeah.
And they do. Yeah. You know, beauty magazines are designed to make you feel inadequate. So you'll go and buy the makeup products, or you'll go and, you know, buy that clothes, or go on that stupid diet. And what I've noticed, sort of even when we're posting our stuff on the business Facebook, is that there's a lot more adverts like that now aimed at men, you know, about men's skincare and men's this and men's that. And I'm thinking, oh, there's obviously like that many women now are getting wise to what's going on. They're going to start targeting the guys now to try and make them feel inadequate and unattractive and all this jazz, because that's what makes their money, isn't it? You know, it's like, and I think we inadvertently get sucked in to that belief system that we're not good enough as we are, really. And again, that whole sort of, you know, we've got to understand as an individual what it means to be a victim for us, and it's anything that makes us feel powerless or unable to direct even the day, you know. And I know, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, and at the end of the day, if you're not feeling good enough, you're choosing that, right? Because
exactly, and
you feel anything unless you choose to feel. I drill this into my clients all the time: is that nobody can make you feel anything until you choose to feel it. So, you know, if it doesn't make sense for me to say to you, Rita, you make me so angry. Because I might as well just put all my power on a platter and go, there you go, you win. You made me angry. You win. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm giving away my power. But if when I say I'm choosing to be angry, I'm standing in my power. It's okay to feel angry, but you got to own it, because if you don't own it, then you become the victim, right? Yeah.
And it's interesting to talk about anger, because that thing, when we get angry about something, it's because it's pressing a button in us. You know, it is. There's only love and fear, isn't it, in the planet? And that's it. They're the only two emotions. Everything stems from them, really. And you know, there are sort of, you know, situations where it suits people to stay powerless. You know, I used to work in the government a long time ago, you know, used to manage big offices and stuff, and, you know, a lot of great people. But there were some people who, you know, they literally, you know, they were constant victims, because if they were a victim and it was, you know, the system's fault, and I don't mean the public, I mean the staff.
Right.
We had, you know, if it, you know, wasn't their fault because once we're not that victim, once we start owning our decisions, once we start taking personal responsibility, then we set our own standards of failure and success. But if we're constantly a victim, then we don't theoretically have to take any responsibility. And that's it. It's not, you know, it's surrendering that power, but it's surrendering life, really. You know, that's one of the things for me about this victim to victorious, the life coaching stuff that I do. It's about really saying, you know, we can always make some money. You know, we can go through the house and find stuff to sell, or, you know, we can go and make a couple of bucks, you know, to go and buy dinner. But we can never get our time back.
Yes.
You know, once, and I know time's a perception, and it doesn't really exist. You know, we can talk for hours about, you know, the quantum mechanics of all of that. But, you know, the reality is, if I do that, it's gone. I can do it again. Can't get that back because it's gone. And when we stay in victim mode, when we don't take responsibility for even making some simple changes, then we are absolutely wasting our life. We are destroying our time. So we either need to accept it and stop moaning about it, or we need to do something about it, really. And again, you know, I don't want to sound harsh with that. It's about, well, we have to own that and then start taking these little steps, doing something different every day, making a plan, drawing up that stuff. And it actually has huge changes, you know.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? It's all about, you've got to make a change. You've got to stop living small and start thinking about living big, because we were all born to live big, right?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were.
So I just want to, if I can just briefly, I just want to go through the life path numbers for a moment, because there's all kinds of people who are going to be listening who have various different life path numbers, and there's a positive side and a negative side to each life path number. So the negative side is what's going to hold you back, right? The negative side is what's going to cause you to feel like the victim, to feel kind of trapped and unable to move forward. So if by chance you happen to have a life path number of 1, this is somebody that should be very independent, but on the negative side, they become codependent, all right? They have a really hard time being on their own, so to speak. They stifle their creativity. All the things that they want to step into, being the inventor, the creator, the ingenious one, you know, they stifle those abilities, and that causes them to feel stuck. Somebody who has a 2 life path number is somebody who is overly sensitive and can use that sensitivity as a tool, right? To keep themselves trapped. I suffer from depression, therefore I don't have to move forward. I'm too afraid to step forward, therefore, you know, I know that I'm sensitive, but that's what's going to keep me trapped. Okay, so that's a choice. It's also a choice. The 3s, you know, somebody who has a life path number of 3 lacks focus. Okay, they're very creative spirits, but they lack focus. So they have a hard time narrowing it down and getting something done. So they get overwhelmed with all the ideas. We were talking about this before we started, because I'm in a 3 personal year, and it's like, oh my God, right? I'm probably the only person on the planet who says she really can't wait until the year of 4 come in. The 4s, God bless you 4s. The 4s will often be the victims. They are the best victims out there. And the reason for that is that the 4s have an incredible ability to focus, okay? So they can focus on anything. And they really want to do well. They really want to get things done. They are the builders, right? 4 posts into the ground creates the builder, and creates the building, I should say. And so the person who has the 4 life path number is somebody who wants to do well, but gets very frustrated very easily and tends to focus too much on what isn't right in their world. They're always pointing the finger outside of themselves. Everybody else caused this. I can't do that because this is happening. You know, they tend to, I'm not saying all 4s are like this. I'm saying that in the negative side, what I'm referring to as I talk on these life path numbers is the negative potential of your life path number. It does not mean that that's who you are. So don't start sending me hate mail.
Yeah. Right? I'm a 4 and I'm very positive. Yeah, I don't know. I can't even remember what I am, which is so bad, isn't it?
You're an 8. You're an 8. 4. Yeah, you're an 8.
I'm an 8, okay. I'm an 8. I will listen intently to when you get up to 8 then.
Okay, good. The fives, on the negative side of the five, they resist change. They really get stuck in the mud, right? They have a really hard time with accepting that change is necessary, that they need to be flexible, adaptable, and resilient. So they, when they're resisting change, obviously change can't happen, right?
Yeah.
The sixes are the perfectionists, right? They have a real high standard for themselves and everybody else around them. So obviously that's going to quite often stop the progress that they may want to make.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for them to get support from others when they're holding the bar so high for the others as well. The sevens are too much in their heads. They overthink everything, right? So they have a hard time putting things into motion quite often, because they have to make sure that there's a written guarantee that if they do this, that it will turn out, right? Trust is the big issue for the sevens. So a lot of sevens have a hard time trusting in the process of things.
Right.
8 is all about power and authority, right? And about money as well. So sometimes the 8s don't do well with their money, so they overspend, they overcommit. They don't know how far their money goes. But also, it's not just related to money, but it's also related to understanding that the 8s, more than anybody else, have to understand that they teach people how to treat them. So this is a case in point, because the 8 is somebody who needs to step back. We all need to step back, but the 8s in particular need to step back and ask themselves, what am I doing to contribute to this crappy reality that I'm living, right? When did I say it was okay for you to treat me like a doormat? When did I say it was okay for you to disrespect me, right? Maybe I didn't say anything, and that was as much as saying it's okay to disrespect me because I didn't speak up for myself, right? So the 8s are about power and authority, and the 9s have a really hard time letting go, right? They hang on to stuff. They're loyal, they're dependable, they're the fixers, they're all that. But when they go to the negative side, they have a very hard time releasing and letting go of whatever issue is going on. So for example, if there's hostility towards somebody, or if there's a forgiveness issue, man, they have a hard time. If you cross a 9, they have a very hard time letting go of stuff like that. So that's my spiel. So
awesome.
Yeah, so as we're going through this, then maybe everybody can kind of sort of think a little bit about their life path number and maybe how that's playing out for them in a way that's holding us back.
I know, I know, because you're the total expert with numerology, you really are. But my understanding as well is, like, in addition to that, it depends on what year it is, what day of the week it is, what the month number is, then that's all gonna play into that as well, isn't it? And what I find really sort of encouraging, if that's the right word, is that science, which I'm often quite flippant about, they're catching up with what the Inuits knew, what the Aboriginals knew, the stuff you're talking about, because they're looking at, the more they've looked at the atom and the quark and the neutron and the proton and all that, you realise that everything's just energy. And of course we've got multi-universe theories, we've got the whole thing with epigenetics, where they're looking at energy in the cells. So, the idea that once upon a time they would have scoffed at, oh, don't be ridiculous, it doesn't matter when you were born, or don't be ridiculous, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, or don't be ridiculous, it doesn't matter what year it is. They're understanding now that where the planets are, it does have a different gravitational pull on the planet, that, so all the stuff that has been out there, practiced from a very natural and intuitive point of view, that's now brought forward by lovely people like yourself, so people can better understand it. They're actually really trying to navigate their way through that stuff now, without actually admitting to it that it's actually all right, So I think it's really useful. Cool. The woo was cool, actually. And from the reasons and stuff I do, I've spoken to police officers, doctors, church ministers, everybody, the whole shebang, really, so, and it's interesting, because there's, when you get out there and they haven't got that hat on publicly, and they can come in the back door and have a little chat, then they're cool with it, but I think more and more those boundaries are getting pushed, and that can only be a good thing for everybody, to be honest with you, because people who struggle with maybe blaming themselves for everything can say, well, actually, the energy on the planet's really bad at the minute, so it's going to heighten everything about ourselves that is our natural tendency. You know, when I worked in the government, they did a thing called Myers-Briggs. I'm sure some people listening will be familiar with it. And, you know, it's a business tool, isn't it? To sort of, the idea being is once you understand everybody's preferred way of learning, working, communicating, and what really triggers them, then you're supposed to adopt your communication to those people. I worked in the government, that never happened. You know, they just did the courses, everybody got their little label, and then they all carried on in the same way. So there you go. That was a horrendous waste of money from a big point of view. But what that dealt with was a similar thing, to say, well, if you know, there's a natural tendency that we have, which would be with the numerology, wouldn't it, to say that particularly when we're stressed, this is the most likely way we're going to behave, because we're going to revert to our natural way of being, and that has got to be affected, like I say, what like you're talking about with the numerology, hasn't it? So you know, I would be telling a fib to say that, you know, I ask people, you know, what their life path number is or anything like that, because I don't, you know, and I think maybe I should, you know, because I think that would be a good starting point as well. You know, but yeah, you know, but seriously, I think that would be really cool. Only after you've given me the big list of what it all means. You know, but you know, one of the things I do is, you know, there are a series of questions through conversation that kind of ascertain sort of, you know, where somebody sits from that natural tendency, so we know where to start from, really, you know, because, but basically at the end of the day, you know, because we go back to that fear and love, it's a fear of not succeeding in some way, and it's a lack of self-love and that lack of self-confidence to greater or lesser degrees, isn't it? So, you know, that's one of the things that we look at there. And, you know, a simple thing like, sort of, for anybody even listening now, you know, before we get into any nitty-gritty, is to think about maybe a dream they had as a kid, you know, something they wanted to be, or, you know, something they wanted to do. So, you know, for the sake of an example, let's think of, you know, somebody who wanted to be, you know, a famous dancer. Doesn't matter whether it's male or female, not important. You know, but, you know, for whatever reason, when they were kids, they were discouraged from that, or told they couldn't be it, or life just didn't really pan out like that, you know. And now, you know, they're older, you know, maybe even middle-aged, whatever, and it's like, well, I'm never going to be a famous dancer now. You know, and you know, that's possibly true, you know, who knows, but you know, it's to look at that dream, whatever it was when you were a kid, and say, well, okay, what was it about that dream then? Was it about being famous? Was that what was inspiring? Was it about being well known? Was it about being recognized? Was it about that sense of self-importance? You know, was it about dancing? You know, was it about the physical activity of dancing? Was it the performing on the stage? You know, what was it? Was it the ability to entertain people? Was it that sense of community, being with a troupe, or was it being the star of the show? You know, it's to start examining, just even on whatever the dream was, whether it was, you know, I don't know, running off and joining a circus or traveling the world, you know, what was it about that? To break it down, you know, to say, well, what was it that excited me about that thought? And to really sort of now look at our life and say, well, okay then, when we can start identifying those in even order of priority, because somebody might say, oh, well, actually, it was never about sort of like, I never really wanted to be famous. I just really wanted to make people feel good. You know,
so
I wanted to be on stage to make people feel good.
And
that's it, and that's what we do. So, well, okay, then. Exactly, you know, and if it was about, to say, the dancing, well, you know, there's, you know, I've seen people, you know, there's great stuff on you know, TED Talks, on TV, on, you know, if you bother looking at the internet for cool stuff, you know, there's people in wheelchairs doing acrobats, people in wheelchairs dancing, you know what I mean? So it's about, there are truly no limits. It's like, let's look at that and start building some of that dream back in their life, you know. And then, you know, there's the other aspect about where people really genuinely want a big life change, because, you know, they hate, sorry, go on, I know you want to say something about, you know me, I'll just keep talking, so I'll stop.
Really?
We're both the same, so I'll stop for a minute, go on.
Well, you know, it's very interesting. I like what you're saying here. So we find the dream, and like, I'll be 60 this year, right? And
you don't book it, darling, you don't book it.
You're sweet.
You don't.
She's lying.
But you see, joking apart, sorry to cross you, but joking apart, isn't that interesting? Because in our heads, we have what 60-year-olds should look like, shouldn't we?
Yeah, well, I don't feel it. I definitely don't feel it.
Being conditioned. So age is just a number. So go on, but you'll be 60 this year. So go on.
So I'll be 60 this year. And one of the things that occurred to me that when my marriage broke down, I don't know, almost 6 years ago now, one of the downfalls in my previous marriage was my ex-husband did not allow me to dream. Now, let me rephrase that. It's not that he didn't allow me to dream. I chose to allow him to have that power over me to take away my opportunity to dream. So I dreamt about being a well-known numerologist, and he said, that's never going to happen. You can't do it, right? You'll never make it, is what he said. And that threw me forward even further. Now, I'm not the most famous numerologist there ever was, but I've been very successful, and I'm very happy with that, you know? And then when you talk about...
I'd say you showed him. I'd definitely say you showed him.
Yeah.
Send him this. There you go.
Send him the video, yeah. Yeah, it's his journey. But no, but what really got to me is after I left, and I'm now with my partner Serge. It's so amazing because he does encourage me to dream, and I want people to know that if you feel stuck, and you feel like you've lost your dream, or you just don't even know what your dream is anymore, you need to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you to dream. Yeah. Right? The ones that are telling you that you can't do it. I look at my ex-husband as one of my greater gifts. When he told me I couldn't do it, that was the thing that went, watch me, right? Yeah. You know, and I marched right out that door shortly after that, and I did make it. But again, it was choices, right? I could have chosen, it was 27 years of a choice to stay there, and then when I made the big decision to leave, I was able to start dreaming big, right? Stop living small, start dreaming big, and I have, and I've made it. But the other interesting thing is too, when you talk about this whole dissection of the dream, I think what I'm getting from this, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you're saying, okay, so the idea of the dancer, let's put it in my terms, the idea of being the expert rider, okay, horseback rider. I call myself the oldest living beginner rider in the history of riding. But damn it, I'm nearly 60 years old. I'm still crawling up on the beast, and I'm still doing it twice a week, right? Yeah. The MRI from my head injury last year didn't determine, it determined I still had a brain, but it still hadn't figured out why I still ride. I still do it, right? Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that when we look at that dream, we start pulling it apart. Maybe physically we can't ride, okay? Mm. But you're saying we have to determine what is it about that dream that inspires us? Is it sitting on the horse, or is it being with the horse? Because if it's just being with the horse, you don't have to be on that horse. Even though you described your dream as being that of the rider or the dancer, as you chose. Find something else that really dig into that dream, if I'm understanding this correctly. Figure out what is it of that dream that really still appeals to you, that still hasn't gone away, that maybe you can facilitate it in a different way. Maybe you can open your mind a little bit and let the grown-up look at the dream through the grown-up's eyes rather than looking at it through the wounded child's eyes.
Yeah, and that's very much part of an early process that we do with the life coaching, whether I call it intuitive life coaching or it doesn't really, I hate labels, so it doesn't really matter. But, going back to the horse thing with you, the ride, and it's like, well, like you say, is it sitting on it? Is it being with the horse? But what would riding represent? Is it the freedom? Is it that being aloft so you can see things more clearly? Is it that sense of being at one with a beautiful animal? Do you like riding alone? Do you like riding with other people? Is it the fact that you've got that sort of interaction with the animal that, you're meant to be in charge, although my limited experience with horses tells me that that's not always the case. But generally you're meant to be master of that beast, and it is, again, it's like, well, we can take it down, to so many levels that will often not only reveal how we can manage bringing that dream into a reality in maybe another form,
and also get us unstuck.
To heal some of those things from the past, to say, well, because if we, you know, if we think about, well, you know, you fall from your horse, then it's like, you know, from an energetic point of view, it's like, so, okay, well, I mean, not that we do it now, of course, but it's like, well, you know, why did that happen? You know, what did that do? What did that make you examine? You know, there's all those things, isn't it? Because you know as well as I do that, you know, and I know, like, you know, physical pain, because, you know, I fell down the steps, cracked my back, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I know enough that we can fix physical things. We can heal that pain when we find out really what else is attached to it, because the body heals and regenerates itself all the time. So everything's always encapsulated and connected to every other thing. And the more we understand that and our part in that, that we're not the victim unless we choose to be, then the easier it is to become masters, you know. And I don't want to make anybody, you know, feel that we're, you know, diminishing, you know, some people are genuinely, you know, held prisoner, held captive, tied up, you know, they're genuinely, you know, that type of victim is very different. And sometimes that, you know, has happened in the past that then influences the future. Absolutely, you know. But, you know, from the self-sabotage stuff, then, you know, there's a 100% way to fix that without a shadow of a doubt. You know, there truly is. And I've seen it happen. You know, I've been very blessed to be part of many journeys where, you know, things that people didn't think they were ever capable of doing, and they've done, you know, and it's so rewarding to do that, you know.
You know, I was a victim for a long time. I chose to be a victim. I don't want to say I was a victim. I chose to be a victim. Nobody made me a victim. I chose to be a victim. So it came from a lot of programming from my past, from my parents and whatnot. And certainly my spouse had a very have-not mentality. So we were just kind of stuck all the time, always, you know, going paycheck to paycheck, barely, you know, barely surviving. But I do remember I had a physical issue that it was a pain in my jaw that I got. There was an unexplainable pain in my jaw. And I went from doctor to doctor to doctor. And every time I walk in, I'd be looking for the certificates on the wall going, yeah, okay, they can fix me because, you know, he's accredited here and he's accredited there and she's accredited here and there. And I remember the last one that I went to was a periodontist who said, Mrs. Perry, you're just suffering from stress, right? And I really did not feel very stressed at that time. But what I didn't realize was that the body, having been under stress for so long, gets to a certain point where you let your guard down and you become less stressed. All of a sudden, it's like, bam, the physical aspect of the stress surfaces. And that's what was happening. But I didn't believe him. So I remember I stormed out of the office. Well, I'm not stressed, right? And I started.
I'm not stressed.
My car. I'm turning left. I was turning left onto Quinpool Road off Roby Street in Halifax. I was making my left-hand turn, and I was sitting there waiting to make the turn, and it was like a bag of hammers just hit me right in the forehead, and I went, frig off, you know what? I got to stop doing this. I got to stop going and getting these guys to fix me, because the only person who can fix me is me, right? And because I had been surrendering my power and giving it away, and that caused me to feel stuck and trapped. And I felt stuck and trapped because I didn't feel that I had the power to heal myself. Yeah. So that's what got me into Reiki and energy work and whatnot. And ultimately, what landed me right here as a numerologist.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it, that the whole jaw thing and the pain here. Yeah. You know, because people grind their teeth and clench their teeth when they're stressed, but it's very symbolic of keeping your mouth shut and not really saying what you want to say. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's the thing there, isn't it? You know, and it's so, you know, and even physiologically, you know, if ever people go to the dentist and they say there's usually, well, I think it's when you go, they do the teeth cleaning thing, there's usually like the skeleton, and it talks about TMJ, you know, transmandible joint stuff about, so your jaw affects your back and your back affects your jaw, so everything's connected physiologically and energetically, because there's only energy, isn't there, really? So now I'm going to ask you, because you've sent your clouds down to where I am. What's it all about? What's that? So I'm just going to put a light on. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm just like, where's the sun gone? That's everybody on the eastern shore, isn't it? Doing that. There you go.
Well, I want to point out too that as we talk about this, the stress and you know, you talk about the TMJ and whatnot, and keeping your mouth shut. This is something that will affect the 2 life paths and the 9 life paths. Big time, right? Because they are the peacekeepers. These guys are the fixers and the peacekeepers, and they want to keep everything going like this. So they take it all in and they don't allow it to come out. So that can cause a person to feel very stuck too. So what else can a person do, Rita? What else can a person do to help themselves to lift out of this feeling stuck?
You know, one of the simplest things, well, there's two probably simplest things, so I'll tell you them both. One of them is to literally get 2 pieces of paper, like A4, and a dinner plate, and draw around the dinner plate on each piece of paper, and then divide that circle up into 24 segments. So that's a day. It's the hours of a day.
Okay.
So you take one sheet of paper about what your day looks like now. You know, how long you sleep or you don't sleep, how long you spend doing work or whatever it is. And then, so you fill that in, so you have what your 24-hour day, your average day, you know, looks like. Yep. And then on the other sheet of paper, you're going to draw what you would like your day to look like. You know, whether it's more sleep time or whether it's more playtime or whatever it is, you're gonna do that into what you would really like. And then look at the two, and really, first of all, see how far apart they are for a start. You know? So on a simple thing, if somebody wants more sleep or more, you know, more relaxation time, then, you know, that's like looking at the rest of the day and say, well, how can I go to bed earlier? You know, if somebody needs more time to, you know, invest in themselves, you know, sort of like have some meditation time or have some quiet time, then, you know, can you do that by getting up earlier in the morning or taking a bit of time out of your day? Now, to get from sort of what it really looks like to what you would like it to look like, that's where you then need to sort of seriously do a plan. And, you know, one of the things, even at home, without the help of anybody else helping them, is to seriously do those two things, and then literally get a diary and say, well, okay, then, you know, I'm going to set myself some targets, which I know will suit some of the life path numbers because they like a plan and they like a target, but make them achievable. There's no point in saying, whoever we are, whether we're a 1 or to a 9, there's no point in anybody saying, you know, well, by the end of next week, everything's going to change. Because it's not going to, you know, it's not going to happen. So then all we're going to feel is demoralized and worthless and pointless and all the rest of it. Right. So pick, you know, what I'd suggest to people is pick something initially that they really do feel they can influence significantly. So we can influence when we get up, we can influence when we go to bed, usually 9 times out of 10. You know, we can influence, you know, I always say to people, go, oh, well, you know, I can't have any time in the day. I say, yeah, but if you had to take your car to the garage, you'd find an hour then. If you'd have to take your dog to the vet or the cat to the vet or your kids to the dentist, or, you know, if you had a court appointment, you'd go, wouldn't you, make the time. So we've got a lot more control over our hours than we think sometimes. So, you know, it's to really just pick a something and make a little plan for that month and say, this is what I'm going to do, whether it's every day or by the end of this week and by the end of next week. And what they'll start to see is that little tiny things start to shift because you start to put some control back in your life, really.
Well, I was just going to say that. That's exactly what that feels like.
Yeah, it's just, and it's to pick, you know, people think, oh, well, that's just a silly thing, but it isn't, because on a psychological level, even doing the simplest things, you know, one of the best words that we can all learn is no. Yeah. You know, we often tell kids off for saying no, but that's the best word we can use, actually. And we can say it in a nice way, you know, because people often who are kind and loving and generous feel very obligated to give their time away. You know, they feel mean on other people, all that stuff, you know. You know, I think it was Mother Teresa that was sort of credited with saying, if your compassion lacks yourself, then your compassion's lacking. So we have to learn to say no. And what we can say is, you know, something like, well, thank you for thinking of me to invite me to that, but I'm going to say no on this occasion. Yeah. You know, but thank you anyway. You know, thank you for thinking I could help you with that. That's really, you know, very flattering. And but I'm tied up doing something at the minute. So, but what I can do is send it off to this person, or you know, we can say no in a myriad of ways.
Yes, of course.
One of the things is, of course, you know, what often comes back in those situations, isn't it? It's like, well, that's not fair. You're being mean, and because that other person wants to dump it back on us. So, you know, to get that, go from victim again to victorious, we have to learn to say no. And, you know, one of the phrases sort of we used and have used for a long time, and a lot of our friends have now adopted, is thank you for that, but I'm just a bit peopled out at the minute. Yeah. We just need some time, you know. And So it's not about, well, I don't want to be with you, or I don't like your company, or it's like, you know what, we just need some downtime. It's just, I'm just a bit people down, so we just need to just be, you know. And loads of our friends have started like, that's like a very acceptable phrase. It's like, well, okay, thanks for that, but no, you know. And I think it's important as we learn to say no, that we also give others permission to do that. You know, that it, and that makes us even more powerful as well, if you like, because we free ourselves from obligation, and we allow others to embrace their own authenticity as well, and that just creates a much nicer environment for everybody. Now, I know that there are circumstances where, you know, there's care commitments for family or friends, or, you know, animals or whatever. So again, in those situations, it's like saying, well, okay, then how can I bring in other support that help me have time for me, help me to make changes with that, you know.
Delegate.
And, you know, it's sort of just doing that, you know. And then another thing, sort of going back to what can people do at home, one of my favorite things to get people to do is go to the dollar store and go and buy lots of cheap post-it notes. Lots of cheap post-it notes. And then it depends on sort of how public you want to be about it in your own home or not. When you're at the dollar store, get a piece of, is it those big pieces of cardboard? What are they called?
Crystal boards.
That's it. 2 pieces of them. And I'd say get a black and a white, or a red and a green, you know, or something that's very obvious about yes and no, if you like. Okay. So on the post-it notes, so I'd say stick them on a wall somewhere if you can, and if not, just have them in a room with you. And then on your post-it notes, take each post-it note in turn and write one thing that you worry about, one thing that you feel powerless over, one thing that irritates you, whatever it is. Just write one thing on each post-it note and just stick it on the wall. And then look at each one in turn and say, can I do something about this, yes or no? Okay. And what we're doing, it's actually a psychological tool, and you'd normally get people to draw 2 circles, a great big one and a little one, because it's called the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And again, it's about putting power back in our life. So say, for example, we have red and green. So on the red one, we've stuck all the post-it notes that we're worried about on the red, because that's like driving us crackers, And we take each one off in turn and we say, can I do something about this, yes or no? And if we say yes, we stick it on the green one. Okay. And I guarantee, you know, 99% of people are going to move a good 80-85% across.
And then you realize how much control you really do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And the converse can also be true, because we also think we can fix everything, and we can't. Okay. So when we've done that, we look at the stuff that we've said we can fix, and we say, okay, what can I actually do to change that? What action can I take? And if we can take some, we do it. We absolutely do it. If we look at it and go, well, actually, you know, I can't really do anything. So we can't, you know, we all complain about the bank. So, you know, we can move where we bank. We can try and get a more ethical bank. We can go to, you know, to a credit union and stuff like that. But we'll come to a point where it's like, well, okay, I can't do any more about that. So there's no point in me moaning and complaining about the banking system if I have to use it. So I'm sticking that back on the red thing. Because it's destroy my time. So we do end up with things we can control, and like you say, we've got a lot more in our control than we realize, and things that we genuinely can't fix, and we just stop worrying about them, and we focus all our attention on changing all the things that we can change. And whenever our heads go to a place of feeling powerless again, if we've done the red and the green, or the black and the white, or whatever colors we want to associate with it, we can think, is that red or is that green? Can I genuinely do something about that? And because we've started changing things, we become much more adept at knowing, well, actually, you know, it might seem like a big thing, but I can actually do something about that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take these small steps, you know. And I've seen like a lot of, you know, that's good for not only achieving dreams, it's absolutely a fabulous tool for reducing stress.
Well, I do believe that having a visual, when you're feeling overwhelmed because you feel out of control, because that's when we feel overwhelmed, when we're out of control. When you have a visual, it's so much better. I know that a couple of times when I left, you know, real jobs, as they call them, I used to take a piece of paper and divide it in half, and I would write down all the things I didn't like about that job. And for everything I didn't like about that job, I would write something on the right-hand side about what I wanted instead. If this isn't what you know, if I don't want a 9-to-5 job, well, what would you prefer? Well, I would prefer more flexibility in my hours. You know, that sort of thing. So you build that. And it's amazing how you can break it down, and then you get a really clear visual. I mean, if you can't have a visual on something, it's very difficult to manifest it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what, you know, part of that living the dream coaching that I do with from the victim to victorious, that's exactly that. It's like, well, you know, they say, oh, well, I want more flexibility. Okay, well, what do you mean by that then? Is that working every day for a little while?
Right.
Is that only working a few days a week? You know, well, you know, what hours are we looking at? Are you a morning person, afternoon? You know, and it absolutely, like you say, it puts things into a manageable form, but actually really clarifies the thought, you know. I mean, I actually worked with a guy a long time ago. He was one on my staff, and you know, he was working in an office doing stuff he hated with a passion, and he wanted to be an airline pilot. That was really his dream. So the first thing I asked him to do was go out and buy a model of the plane that he wanted to fly and stick it on his desk.
Right.
So he never lost sight of his vision. And you know, that guy actually did leave his job and became an airline pilot. And what he did was, you know, he went and took some flying lessons, and then he was getting some hours in, and then he was fortunate enough that he could remortgage his house, and he got some, that's what he did, because that's how passionate he was about his dream. You know, that's where he got the money from. But his training with the company that he went to, the deal was that they would, as long as he worked for them for X number of years, then he wouldn't owe them anything for their training.
Perfect.
So if he left, you know, within a certain period of time, he'd have to pay so much. So, but just to get like some flight hours in, he used his house as collateral to do that. And because that's how passionate he was about what he wanted to do, you know. And I can still see the picture he sent me. He's a really cool dude. I mean, I won't say his name, of course, but, you know, and he wasn't a tall guy. And there's this photograph of him and these other pilots, because they've all just passed they've all just got their wings. And there's this little guy in the middle, and he has got the biggest smile out of all of them. I kid you not. I think if he just smiled anymore, his face would have generally fallen in half, you know. It was like, you know, one of those sort of, you know, moments of like, there was such a joy, not just for him, but for other people that knew him, because he became an inspiration, you know, for some. But equally, again, sometimes the converse can be true, because when you're achieving your dream, sometimes the people around you can be very, not only unsupportive, but can become quite mean, you know, as you've experienced.
You have to surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah, and you do, because what you show them when you're starting to make changes in your life, whatever it is you're showing other people that actually it's all about choice, and not everybody's comfortable with knowing that, you see. So, you
know, one of the things I think is very important when we get back to and we're going to have to wrap this up here in a second, but one of the things we talk about with the word choice, when I'm saying things to my friends and my family, you know, I'm choosing to be angry, I'm choosing to be sad, I'm choosing to be whatever, not only does it convey what I feel, I own it, I'm standing in my power, but it's giving them permission to do the same.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And it's setting an example. And I think this is so valuable when you're raising kids, for example, you know, is to make sure that your children have to understand that, no, mommy doesn't make you mad. You are choosing to respond in anger, you know? That sort of thing. So in summary, going from victim to victorious, I think that it's fair to say that we need to go back to the drawing board and look at, you know, what dreams we had as a kid, break that down into little pieces, figure out what we can do now. You know, we might not be, maybe at 60 years old, we're not going to become the airline pilot, but maybe there's some other aspect of that dream that we could still accomplish in some other way. So opening our mind to the possibility that maybe it wasn't the actual flying the plane, that maybe it was some other aspect of that, service to people, whatever. Learning to say no, I think, is a very valuable asset to have as well. And creating the visualization, really visualize.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. And I think I'd probably just add one more thing to that, in as much as, if we feel incapable, or if we feel like when, you know, we can't do something, whatever it is to really, again, go back and think about when we were a kid, about figuring out where that came from. Where did that belief come from? You know, who put it there? Because somebody's put it there. Right. You know, because little kids believe they can do absolutely everything, you know, because actually they can. But, you know, so it's to go back and say, well, you know, where was that planted? Or is that something that has developed and grown and become this sort of weed from a different thing that was planted, that we've now then transferred into something else ourselves, you know, to like untangle that, you know.
At the end of the day, I live by the saying, as you believe, so it is. Yeah. If you believe life is tough, I guess it is. If you believe that life is good, I guess it is, right? As you believe, so it is. That is what's going to create your reality. Your beliefs create your reality. So if somebody has planted a seed and that seed has become now a weed, you need to pull that weed out. And you're the only one that can do it. You can't expect someone else to do it. Right? If you don't put the effort in to make the change, nothing's going to change. Right? No,
absolutely. And I think one of the things, I mean, I think that weed analogy is a really nice one. You know, because I think, you know, you are the only one that can pull it out. I think sometimes you just need a bit of support in identifying what the weeds are. Because sometimes, you know, I particularly like weeds in the garden because they're just wildflowers that people don't like. But, you know, from a gardening point of view, you know, we've got a great friend who's a fabulous gardener, so I do get her over and say, well, what's this and what's that? And I think we mustn't be afraid to ask for support in identifying what those weeds are. Right. But that's it, because if we get somebody else to pull them out, then they're just going to pop up somewhere else, because we won't have done that whole gardening thing ourselves really and done it properly. So, and, you know, there's truly, you know, I truly have seen people from the most challenging circumstances transform their lives, you know, that there truly is, you know, everybody can achieve far more than they've ever been led to believe. And and it doesn't matter, you know, there's people who are 85 taking up yoga for the first time, or you know, cycling across the planet, or swimming the channel, or whatever, you know. We need to just shake up those preconceived ideas and start just tapping back into that power that we are, because we're remarkable beings, all of us, every single one, you know, truly are, and we've just forgotten that. We just need to remember.
So one of the things that, and I'm just going to wrap this up, as I said a few minutes ago, but I'm going to wrap this up. I want people to understand that you and I've worked together many times, and one of the things that Rita is very good at is connecting with spirit. So if you have any grievances, if you have some grief, if you have anger, hostility, whatever, unresolved issues with people who have passed on, Rita is an extremely good spirit communicator, and she can act as a mediator between you and spirit. Okay, so if you've got things that are unresolved and you'd like to have a little bit of help with that, I would really highly recommend her services for that. She's a life coach. She's a certified life coach. So I think it's very important to know that before you contact a psychic medium, that you know that you're in good hands, that you're in good professional hands. I have been to psychics before who have told me when certain people in my life would die and how they would die and things like that. And listen, if I was an unstable kind of a person, that might not have ended well, right? So it's very important that the messages are handled carefully and skillfully, okay? And that is what makes Rita such a great professional at what she does. So Rita is going to be launching a new website, hopefully very soon. It's going to be Rita Crosbie, that's CROSBIE.com. I'll put it up on the screen for you. But for now, you can contact her at www.soundbeings.com. She and her husband, Phil, are sound therapists. Is that correct? Okay, sound therapists, where they have amazing gong baths. All these gongs are attuned to planetary vibrations, and it's just the most amazing experience. So you can check her out there. They've got a Facebook page, and you can contact Rita through that as well. And any questions whatsoever, I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. But yeah, anything else I've forgotten?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for, you know, I always love talking to you. You are a constant inspiration. It's just fabulous. And the stuff you know about numerology just blows me away all the time, which is just so cool. And
I just speak numbers.
No, but it's you're totally connected as well. You know, you're very connected to the universe. You're very connected to spirit. You're very, you know, it isn't a cerebral thing with you. It's an absolute deep knowing and a pure translation, really. That's what I feel. And you know, you do far more than I don't know, and it's the whole label thing, isn't it? I don't think numerologists really encapsulates it, really, but if that makes it easy for people to find, you know. But it's true, because it's so much more, you know. You're just all about holistic healing, really, and helping people understand. It is. It's helping people understand and healing themselves, and you know, and you're able to express it in such both an intellectual but a very accessible way, and I think that's a real gift, to be honest. And that's because I know it comes from the heart. So, you know, I know you and me can talk for hours on end, but I know people want to
hang up now.
I know, we're going to hang up now. So, but it is, as ever, an absolute joy. So thank you, and I hope everybody listening, I hope we've helped between us, you know, allay some feelers or inspire you to do something. So that's what it's all about.
Well, that's why we've come together, and this was a little bit off topic for me, but I felt that your message was really important to hear, and if anybody's looking for some life coaching on a very soulful level, one that would include connecting with spirit, by all means connect with Rita for sure. So I'm going to say goodnight, and I just appreciate you so much, and your time, and everybody who's tuned in today. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye. Bye, everybody.